Good afternoon, everybody. It's such a pleasure to have you here today. I am so delighted to share this time with you. Some of you have known us for a long time. Some of you are just meeting us for the first time today. And let me introduce myself. My name is Annette Reynolds. I have done many things in my life, from selling radioactive chemicals to implementing mid-market accounting solutions to running a group that brought investors and entrepreneurs together. But for the last 15 years, I've been involved in real estate. And my biggest regret is that I didn't do it 30 years earlier. Because when you work in real estate, you help people achieve their dreams. It's really a fun career. But a few months ago, I was speaking with my partner in crime, my partner, Lynn Cohen, who's down at the end of the table. And we looked at each other and we said, my goodness, we're two old ladies. And we've got some life decisions to make. And that's where we came upon the discussion of, should we downsize? Should we stay at home? Should I age in place? And ironically, we each chose a different path. And from that conversation, we said, a lot of people are making these decisions. Should they stay in their homes? Should their parents stay in their homes? What should we do about money? What decisions do I have to make? What information do I need to downsize and to get another place? What type of place should I go into? So many questions. And we dipped into our databases and we found a group of people who can help answer those questions. And that's how this event was born. So we're going to go right down the row here. I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves as it's time for them to talk, because they're so magnificent, I cannot remember all the details. So we're going to start with David Tortolad. I met you 2, 3, 4 years ago. And David specializes in reverse mortgages. And at first I wasn't so sure, but I've come to believe that a reverse mortgage is a perfect solution for some people. So I'm going to turn this over to David. David, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into this area, and what we need to know about a reverse mortgage.
I've been in reverse mortgage financing since 2003, and I'm a CRMP. Currently, there's under 160 CRMPs in the country. It's not an easy designation to get, but I thought I should get it just so when I'm sitting down with families, they're being educated by what I call the gold standard in our industry. A reverse mortgage, I would say it's a way to use your home equity. It is a mortgage, but you're using it, it's a way to spend it when you're retired. When you take out a regular mortgage, you're borrowing money and you have a payment, a fixed ongoing expense to pay back the bank. With a reverse mortgage, you are borrowing the money, but they're paying you. Hence the name reverse mortgage. The financing process is flipped backwards. The bank pays you. They could either pay you a monthly payment, you can leave the money in a line of credit. You can combine a line of credit with a monthly payment. You can just leave it all in a line of credit and use it as you need it. You can also use a reverse mortgage to purchase a home. So this is a good application whether or not you want to downsize or stay in your home, because if it makes more sense mathematically to sell your house and buy a house that's smaller and easier to live in, especially as you age, no stairs, widen the hallways, things of that nature, well, you can sell the house you're in and buy the next house with a reverse mortgage for purchase, we call it. And the benefit there is that you typically, when you're retired, you think you might have to sell your home and you're going to have to buy your next house all cash because you're on a fixed income so that you don't have a mortgage payment. With a reverse mortgage, you're taking out a mortgage to purchase the next house, but you do not have a mortgage payment. So the money you're leaving with, the net proceeds of the house you're selling, you don't have to put all that money down on the next house. You could put some or almost, half of it maybe in the bank to live on and use the other half as your down payment. And there'll be a mortgage that will show up at closing in the form of a reverse mortgage that has no payment. So I would say this, that if you want to stay in your house and the house is suitable and meets your needs, then maybe just staying there and doing a refinance reverse mortgage is better. But I've sat down with families and, I've sat down with mom and dad and they have this large 4-bedroom colonial, and it makes more sense to sell it and downsize into a house that maybe costs them less to run, utility-wise, smaller lot of land that they can take care of. But if the house is suitable, they live in a one-level living ranch, we can do a reverse mortgage refinance. And that would be, just to use some math, let's say you own a $400,000 house and there's no mortgages on it, and you're 70 years old, you can borrow about 50% of that home's value. So call it $200,000. So you can, if you have no mortgages to pay off, you can essentially set up a reverse equity line of credit. Most of us know what a home equity line of credit is, so it's very much like that, except that money just sits in the background and you can borrow from it as you need it. And until you borrow from it, you don't owe any money on it. So it just sits in the background, and when you borrow the money, you don't have an ongoing fixed expense because there's no payment to make. You have to make your property taxes, homeowners insurance, flood insurance if applicable, and keep the property maintained. Those are your responsibilities when you take out a reverse mortgage. Other than that, you don't have a principal and interest mortgage payment like you would on a traditional mortgage. Differences between a home equity line of credit and a reverse equity line of credit. When you take out a home equity line of credit, the amount you can borrow is going to be based on your income, not how much equity you have and not how much money you have in savings. It's based on your income. And it'll be your income and the value of the home is how much you can borrow. So if your income's low, you may only be able to borrow $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 with a traditional home equity line of credit. With a reverse mortgage line of credit, you're not borrowing against your income, you're borrowing against the home's value and your age. And the percentage that you can borrow from your home's value is between 45 and 70%. So if you're 62 years old, which is the minimum age required to take out a reverse mortgage, you'll be borrowing about 45% of your home's appraised value. Once you get up to age 85 or more, you can borrow the max, which is 70% of your home's value. No one can ever borrow more than 70% of their home's value, regardless of your age. If you want to stay in your house, this is sort of a new evolution with reverse mortgages. You want to stay in your house and you have plenty of income and have retirement savings, and you want to stay there long term, you can set up a line of credit and coordinate that line of credit with your portfolio. That's sort of a new thing going on right now because the line of credit with a reverse mortgage grows income tax free when it's not sitting there unused. And that's become really appealing to the financial planning community because it keeps their clients away from their portfolio when markets are down. So now you've got this reverse equity line of credit set up, and when markets are down, instead of taking the money from your portfolio and selling it at a loss and potentially being taxed on it, you can now have a new bucket of money, which is your reverse equity line of credit. You can draw from that until the market recovers in your portfolio money. Then you can go back to the portfolio. But it just gives you the back and forth as an insurance account while times are good and bad. So you can switch back and forth.
What's the cost of getting a reverse mortgage? What are we looking at for fees?
Yeah, so the costs are tied to the home's value. So costs are not set for each person that takes out a reverse mortgage. It's tied to their home's value. So if you have a $200,000 house, you're probably looking at about $8,000 in costs. If you have a $1 million house, you're looking at about $23,000 in costs. Those costs are rolled into the loan. So whatever you're able to borrow, they're taken off the top of the loan and financed into the loan. So they're not out of your pocket, so to speak. They're coming out of the home's equity. So when I sit down with families, you have to justify the cost for the benefit of taking out the loan. If the benefit of taking out the loan relieves you of a mortgage payment that you have because we're paying off a mortgage as part of the reverse mortgage process, well, you can figure out what the break even is by dividing that payment that you'll no longer have into what the upfront costs are and figure out what your break even point is. So you can have costs as low as probably today around $7,000 all the way up to $23,000. And
so is that a yearly cost?
no,
What is that?
upfront cost one time. You have an interest rate tied to your line of credit. So if you borrow from that line of credit, you have an annual percentage rate that's deferring interest on the amount borrowed, but you don't have a mortgage payment to make. You don't have a mortgage payment obligation with a reverse mortgage. You can make.
Are your interest rates competitive with, say, a first?
Yeah, they're around 4% right now. But our mortgages run off of an annual resetting interest rate. So we do have fixed rate reverse mortgages, but to keep it not so technical, if you do a fixed rate, you get all your money at closing. You don't have the ability to set up a line of credit. If you do the annually resetting loan, interest rate loan, you have the ability not to have to take any money at closing and take it when you want it. So you don't defer interest on it. If you do a fixed rate loan because the fixed rate sounds better, you might get a $250,000 check at closing. Now you're deferring interest on $250,000, which doesn't make any sense if you don't need the money. Fixed rates really are more applicable for the purchase that we were talking about earlier because you're getting all the money up front anyways to buy the house. Whereas on a refinance, you're setting up money inside of your house to borrow on an as-needed basis when things come up when you're in retirement.
So what happens if I get a reverse mortgage on my home and I decide I need to go into assisted living? What happens then?
Wherever you go, if you have a reverse mortgage, if you're out of the house for 12 months or longer, the loan becomes due. So if you decide to go into assisted living and that's permanent, you're not coming back home, the loan technically becomes due when you're out of the house for 12 months. But if you're leaving the house permanently, it makes no sense to wait 12 months because you have more interest tacking on to what you owe. So if someone dies, once the last borrower dies, the loan becomes due right away. But what it really means is if your intent is to sell the property, the estate's selling it, then they're selling it and they get 6 months from date of death initially to sell the property. So they verify the MLS number with the bank, and then the bank gives them 6 months from date of death. Not date of phone call, date of death. That's important to know.
So it sounds to me that if I'm living on a fixed income, I've been in my house for a while and I have a lot of equity in the house, and I may have other expenses, or I feel that my Social Security and investments aren't giving me enough, I can come and actually get the value of the equity of the house.
Yep, you can get a percentage of it.
There's a cost involved. Are there any limits or limitations on what I can do with the money?
No, there's no limitations on what you can use the money for. There's a limitation in the first year. And so if you can borrow $200,000 in the first year, they won't allow you to borrow more than $120,000 of that $200,000 in the first year. But once you get beyond the 12-month period after you close, the full $200,000 becomes available without any restrictions.
Okay, so it sounds like a solution to a problem when I don't necessarily have regular income coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know we just closed, my husband and I just closed on a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, because we're working. But if I didn't have that, this is another way to take advantage of the equity in our home,
Yeah.
which has been a lot.
Yeah, when you look at a reverse mortgage, just look at it like this. It's just a tool. It's another option to consider to access your home's value. There's only a few ways to get the money out of your house. One is sell it. Two is do a traditional refinance, take out a mortgage, but you have to have sufficient income to do that. Three is do a reverse mortgage, or four is you have wealthy family members that'll pay all your bills for you for the rest of your life. When you think of a reverse mortgage, it's not for everybody. It's just another option that's in the mix to consider. And it's circumstantial, so it depends on your circumstances as to whether or not it's the right option.
So can you pay it back?
Yes. Yep.
And are there extra fees associated with that?
No, there's no prepayment penalty when you pay back a reverse mortgage. If you take out a reverse mortgage today and a life occurrence happens and you have to move out of state to help out a family member, then you can do that. There's no penalty to pay off the loan a day after you do a reverse mortgage. It's not advised to take out a reverse mortgage short term. But if your intent is to stay in the house, in my general rule of thumb is 5 years or more, because then we can justify the upfront cost with hopeful appreciation in the property. But if you're looking to sell within 2 to 3 years and you're forfeiting $23,000 in equity to get a line of credit of $250,000, and then you go ahead and sell it in 3 years, and then you forfeit another 5% of the sale price, it's a lot of equity to forfeit. So it really comes down to the math. When I'm sitting down with families, we're going through the math to make sure it makes sense. But I've sat down with families and walked out the door and said a home equity line is a better solution for you, because they had $10,000 a month in income from dividends, and they were looking to sell within 3 years. So why spend 20 on a line of credit when they can spend $500 and get a home equity line? They're going to sell the house anyways, and they can afford the payment. So in some cases, a home equity line is a better option.
Well, that's the best reason to sit down and speak to somebody who knows. We will have time for questions at the end. I'm going to move along right now. I met Stuart at a networking event, and you know how you exchange cards and hi, what do you do? Well, he told me what he did. I said, I need to get you in front of a group of people. You got to tell a whole bunch of other folks about what you do. Stuart, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself while I get your slides ready, okay?
I'm Stuart Parsons. I'm an architect, and I'm also a certified aging in place specialist. And I love working with homes. It's in my blood. I grew up and helped my father build some houses and spent time working in the trades. And I also like to draw a lot. My grandfather was an artist, and I kind of thought it'd be great to put those things together, and went into architecture school, really not having a clue about what it was involved in. But it was nice. It was fun because it allowed me to work as part of the curriculum for going to school. You had to have work experience. So by the time I got out, I had worked in a few different firms, in a wide range of projects, doing municipal and higher education work, and as well as residential. And I started to notice when I went off in my own practice, a theme was coming up that people were asking me, well, you know, what can we do to our house to allow us to stay here longer? Because we really love it here. We don't want to move. We don't want to downsize and disrupt our network and our contacts and our neighborhood. But we're just not sure what we want to do. We have some ideas. And I just thought that was a curious thing and something I should investigate more. So I have some slides here. So this first project is very representative of what someone might consider if they are looking to stay in their home, and that is to move their master bedroom, which was on the second floor of this building. The before picture on the left shows it's a small cape, and their master bedroom was up on the second floor below one of the skylights on the left. And as you might imagine, there was some headroom conditions. Closets were too small. Getting up to that space, the stairway was steep and it was narrow. And the clients were not elderly by any means, but their kids had grown up and moved out, and they really loved the neighborhood. They'd looked around at other homes. They decided they just wanted to stay there and wanted to do what they thought they could do, which was move their master bedroom to the first floor. And this particular building lended itself well to that, because we really didn't have to do anything major within the home. We moved some walls, but we really just repurposed the first floor spaces where you see those 3 windows on the right-hand side of the entry door. That was a kind of an unused formal dining room that was detached from the kitchen. And there was a guest room behind that. And that gave us enough space to create a new master bedroom and bathroom. And the little piece of building on the right-hand side was a small addition that we had a little bit of space against the lot line to do. And that allowed us to put also their laundry facilities and a big walk-in closet. So the photo on the left was the image of the formal dining room. And on the right, the wall behind the headboard is that same wall. And it's just much lighter in there. We added these windows in front. On the left, you can see what used to be the old guest room is their master bathroom. And through that doorway to the left of the headboard is the addition, which is the laundry facilities and a walk-in closet. Okay, so that's your walk-in closet on the right. It's very well lit, natural light, exactly what they wanted, more space. It's much better in terms of the facilities they had on the second floor. And the master bathroom, we took advantage of the natural light that comes in on that side of the house. We have a roll-in shower, which is another feature we'll talk about. This is another common project And this particular client had a progressive disease. So I honestly don't know how she was dealing with this bathroom for as long as she was. She used a scooter throughout her house, and this is on the second floor. So she needed and wanted to roll into the shower and transfer from the scooter to a shower chair. So we took out the existing tub and cabinets to the left, and luckily on the far shower wall, it backed up to a closet that was in another bedroom. We're able to combine that closet space into the roll-in shower area. So it became much more maneuverable and easy to get around. And what we did is also create a wet area. You don't have to worry about water splashing or seeping or leaking to the floor below. And it can be somewhat of a complicated project, but in particular when you have someone who has an illness, when you're putting these features in, that probably looks like a lot more fixtures and metal hardware than you would see in most showers, but it was all necessary. And we spent a lot of time in locating all of these fixtures and amenities and storage areas to make sure that it was a really comfortable experience for her and that everything she needed to do in her whole routine in showering was accommodated for. And honestly, this is going to be better than any assisted living place. It has everything that she needs. This is another common improvement, and this is actually a commercial business, a commercial entity, but they're in a residential type building. But you often find this in older homes. The photo on the left shows you the landing was too shallow. There just wasn't enough maneuvering space in front of the door. There are no railings. The steps are uneven and in disrepair, and the lighting need to be improved. So what we did on the right was to address all of those items. We brought the landing up flush so that there's a level access through the entryway, no step. There are railings on either side. The items on the riser faces are actually lights, so you can really illuminate the entry any time of day. And the walkway to the left actually takes you to the left side of the building, which was modified to become an accessible entrance. And this is a great feature because it really makes both entrances accessible. And particularly when someone's renovating their home, curb appeal is a big part of that. You don't want to just slap a ramp in front of your home on the front entrance. You can see it really improved the appearance of the building quite a bit, as well as made it easier to get to. At some point, everyone is going to encounter this, that stairs will become an obstacle. And when you're planning for home improvements and staying in your home, it's something you really have to address. And so many of the typical homes in the Northeast, the bedrooms are up on the second floor. One way to deal with that is a stair lift. It's a fairly quick installation, not too much disruption, and really not that much of an investment. The issues are, it's obvious, and maybe that's not comfortable for some people. It also doesn't work with every stair. A lot of stairs are too narrow, they're winding, that becomes a difficult installation, and also difficult for people who may be remaining in the home, living on the second floor in terms of egress. On the right, an elevator can be a really good option for a lot of people. It's certainly a larger project in scope and expense, but it's discreet. Maybe you have a situation in your home where moving your master bedroom to the first floor is either not feasible or you just don't want to do it. If you can find a way to add an elevator, that can make good economic sense in the overall solution for your project. These are some popular improvements and amenities, and I just wanted to go through them quickly. We talked about the master bedroom suite, outdoor living areas. That could be anything from a screen porch, a sitting room. I'm working on one of those as well. It could be an outdoor kitchen, which is kind of a fun thing. Open kitchen renovations, adding family rooms to kitchens, opening up the space. That improves maneuverability. Bathroom renovations, of course, elevators. Attached garage additions are really becoming more popular because people want to be able to drive into their home and not have to get out of the car and back into the elements, particularly if you're carrying things, carrying groceries. You want to be able to get into the house and not have to deal with perhaps a rainy or icy situation outside. And accessory dwelling units. I was actually talking with Art before we started the presentation, and this is something that towns are providing for more in their zoning regulations to also address the housing shortage. And it may make another good option for people that are looking or considering downsizing. If you have the property and the space, you could build your own accessory dwelling unit on your property, perhaps smaller, and then rent your larger home on the property. Or maybe it makes sense to either live in the smaller unit or bring family members in and have them closer to your life. Home offices, laundry and storage rooms, those are also spaces that we find to be too small and hard to maneuver in. Pet rooms are becoming very popular, washing areas, walk-in closets and pantries, again, not enough space and not maneuverable. Annette wanted to address costs, and I think this is kind of just an overall perspective to look at. The column on the left for small costs is really things that subcontractors or home improvement modification contractors can come and do, and they don't need a permit. And oftentimes you're looking to combine more than one of these things, but they're things that can happen quickly. They're not a huge expense. They can make a huge improvement in someone's life. When you get into the medium column, you're looking at projects that typically require permits, and you should plan for them. They may be smaller renovations, but they may also be improving entryways, walkways, driveways. I always tell people, the path starts at the street. There's no sense in making improvements to your home if you can't get through the front door. And if your friends and your family and emergency responders can't get in either, that's a problem. Ramps, elevators, bathrooms, I would say small interior renovations such as a kitchen if it's not a huge kitchen project, because kitchens can be very costly in terms of all the things you have to provide for them. And then large projects can really vary, but then we're talking about major renovations and additions and the accessory dwelling units that we mentioned. I'll just touch on the topic of how much disruption is involved. And the rule of thumb is the larger the project, the more expensive it's going to be, the more disruption is involved, and the longer it will take. If you start working with an architect and from that point through the end of the project completion, you can plan on 7 to 12 months for an interior renovation. It can certainly be longer than that. It can be shorter if you have your team ready, you have a qualified contractor that you trust, and you really take your time and plan for the project as early as possible.
Next is Greta Garnis. And I asked Greta, she has spent most of her adult life worrying about old people like us and where we should live, I think. She's done extensive study in the area. And I've asked Greta to discuss some of the options if you want to leave your home, don't want to downsize particularly, maybe go into a community that has independent and assisted living as well as memory care if your parents or family members should need it. So Greta, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you, Annette. That was a very nice introduction. And as she mentioned, I focus on when you don't want a reverse mortgage or you don't want to do anything to your house. It's amazing. I've been in real estate, in residential, affordable senior for about 25 years now, and seeing the evolution of the senior housing product go from strictly a nursing home to a cruise ship on land has opened up a lot of opportunities. You're lucky that you have many choices, but the flip side is you have many choices. Briefly, I'll just profile the 3 most common senior housing categories: independent living, assisted living, and memory care. Generally, independent living is an apartment. You can get around on your own. You don't need any help with activities. It's generally a 55 or 62 plus property. You have maybe one meal, some light organized activities, full kitchen, that's it. It's basically an apartment. With assisted living, you start looking at a kitchenette instead of a kitchen. You usually have 3 meals included plus snacks. You also have levels of service. Depending on your market or where you're going, you can either have levels, points, or a package. What's happening in the assisted living side is a lot of the pricing is going a la carte, where you rent the unit, that's your base rent, and then depending on where you go, what your level is, and how many services you want, you get an extra amount tacked on every month. Memory care, that's usually the last stop. Everything's included. You have no kitchenette. It's usually something like a hotel room, only a little smaller. All your services are included. Memory care tends to also be a secured unit in some properties because memory care patients, some of them can wander. Some of them have major dementia where they're also a danger to themselves. So frequently, if you go to an assisted living and memory care property, which is the most popular combination, you would see a memory care area separate. It's just as beautiful as the other areas, but they just need the extra security in case people wander or people need help. With choice comes money. New England is not cheap. In New Hampshire, they stopped building nursing homes 20 years ago. So there's a shortage of nursing homes there. There's a shortage of nursing homes in Maine. There's a shortage of assisted living in Maine. In Massachusetts, there's a lot more choice, including nonprofits, which tend to be a little cheaper, and for-profits. You need to figure out what you want. It's a lot like buying a house. What are the things you want in a house? Do you want location? Do you want services? What is important to you as far as what's included and what isn't? You also want to think about money in the sense that in some cases, you will be saving money because you're not paying property insurance, real estate taxes, utilities, homeowners insurance. In some markets in this country, the property taxes are so high that when seniors move to even independent living, they have 6 months of independent living paid for because they save so much money in property taxes. So that's something to think about, but there's also the no snow shoveling, no lawn mowing. My parents in particular are absolutely loving it. They're in an apartment, which is not independent or assisted living, but they also have garage under parking, and every winter they're going no snow shoveling, no bills, car's beautiful. It's a quality of life issue that sometimes is priceless. Another thing that happens is we're all living longer. And when they first started developing senior housing properties, they weren't expecting people to live as long. So what's been happening is, even though the industry will say the average stay is 5 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 20 years. I've done this work in the States, I've done it abroad, and I've seen people that are in assisted living facilities for 40 years, usually because they have no other family or no other place to go. And in that respect, it's good because they have a social outlet, they're not alone, they have someone to take care of them, they have someone to make sure they're taking their meds. That's another intangible benefit that may be important at some point in your life. Unlike when you buy a house or rent an apartment, there's not that 30% of your income measurement to see if you can afford to live there. Most of them assume you can afford it. But what I've started to see is some properties will ask you to prove that you have at least 2 years of income to live at the property. You may have more, you may have less, but a general benchmark is to think of at least 2 years of income to stay at these properties, and I would always roll up, never roll down. There are some states like New Jersey that if you run out of money and you have to go on Medicare, the property that you would be in has to have 10% Medicare people. So that means you wouldn't be kicked out if you ran out of money. I've been to a property in New Jersey where so many people ran out of money, 30% of the residents were on Medicare. It's not unusual that people are starting to outlive their money. But when that time comes and you see things that may be starting to happen, a lot of property managers and a lot of organizations will work with you to either get a financial plan together or they will work with you to find another place to go. So it's not like you're going to be thrown out on the streets. The other thing you may want to think of is when you move, you're technically going to be downsizing. So if you have a king-size bed, it's not going to fit in assisted living. Some bedrooms are big enough that you could have a full, but it's probably going to be a twin. Some units come furnished, some units come unfurnished. Memory care units usually come furnished. You'll get a twin bed, you'll get a dresser, you'll get a closet, not a lot of other stuff. Think hotel room without the bathroom. For the independent and assisted living, once again, if you have huge furniture or big pieces, you're going to have to think how badly you want those. Or look for a large storage unit because there may not be space. I found that a lot of times that you need to go to the property to see it. If you look at it online, that's great, but you need to go see it. I would go see it at least twice. I would go during the day and I would try and go later in the day so you get an idea of how the residents are, how the staff is, what the activities are. You'll always get a free meal if you say you're coming for a tour. Food is very important, and right now the food is restaurant quality in a lot of places. A lot of times they'll bring in the gourmet chefs, it'll be fresh, it'll be like cruise ship food. It's amazing. They'll grow their own vegetables. Some of the residents will have plots out in the property. Food is huge. So when looking at it in general, I would think quality of life issues. I mean, how much are you paying in monthly housing costs? Do you want to do lawnmowers? Do you want to do property insurance? Are your kids not in the area? A lot of times I see New Englanders going to other markets, either to be with their kids or because they want a cheaper place to live. The Carolinas and the Atlanta area of Georgia is becoming super popular because it has new, architecturally very nice properties, but the rents or the costs for senior housing are about 50% less than New England. So a lot of times we're a mobile society. Seniors have no problems picking up sticks and going to live in a better place. Now, with the choice thing in mind, what's happening is in the industry, things are starting to morph and merge. There used to be age-restricted housing, 55, 62 plus, apartment, no services. Now they're throwing in a meal. So even the industry is thinking, is that independent living or is that age-restricted? A lot of the terms you will see can vary. For instance, the age-restricted versus the independent living. Long story short, this is what you have. The other thing I would say that the CCRC stands for Continuing Care Retirement Community. Those are usually six-figure buy-in properties, and you would still have a monthly rent. So you want to think, on the one hand, the care is usually included all the way up. You would never have to move. Sometimes you have to go in as an independent living patient. You can't go in resident as assisted living and memory care. The money that you put in for the six-figure payment is in a savings account, but it gets 0.0000001% interest. If you pass or leave, you do not get all of the money back. What's happening now is the market is being more flexible, so you tend to have a lot more month to month, a lot like apartments. There's no six-figure down payment. There's usually maybe a $3,000 to $5,000 community fee. That's it. If you need to leave, or if you want to go to hospice, or if you want to go live with your kids in another state, 30 days notice and you're out. The in-home senior care, it's popular, but I'm sure you've seen in the news, there is a shortage of caregivers. And that's one thing that the industry is having real problems with, is having enough people to work at the properties. That's one reason why I say you should go a couple times to see different shifts, see how different people interact, just see what's going on. If your gut instinct is telling you it's a good fit, then go. If it's not a good fit, you will know. Hospice care, there are some properties that offer hospice care, but usually hospice care is off-site if you need it, and it's usually brought in off-site if you do want it in your senior living property. Once again, a good property management firm will coordinate that with you. The other benefit of all this is once again, you have a ton of activities included, including on-site fitness. So you don't have to go to the gym, go outside in the snow or the rain. It's right there. You have the on-site beauty salon. You don't have to go outside. It's very discounted prices. The activities are there, and it's not just bingo. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Properties in Philadelphia, they'll bring in people from the Philharmonic or the opera. They are literally turning into cruise ships on land. But with that wealth of amenities comes cost. So I would just encourage you to start looking at the pros and cons and what you think you may be saving staying in your house.
Thank you, Greta. Well, it gives you your options. And really, that's what we're about today, to see if there are options you haven't considered, others that you have, but just to lay it all out in front of you like a smorgasbord, okay? And we've talked about staying in your home. Actually, I arranged these people on purpose. You see, you speak to David, you get the money so that Stuart can do what he needs to do in your home. Then when you're tired of living there, you speak with Greta and you find another place. But some of us aren't ready to do this. We're just ready to sell our homes and downsize. It's really that simple. Don't need the 4-bedroom, don't need the half-acre, don't need the ride-on mower. But one of the challenges that people fear is, okay, I'll sell my house. I need to buy another place to live. Condos are really quite nice, especially if they have elevators. They take care of all the things they do in the senior living places as well. They mow the lawn, they get rid of the snow, they take care of your trash. But how does the timing work? Do I find a place to go first and then try to sell my house? Or if I sell my house and I haven't closed it really becomes problematic, at least in my mind. That's what challenges a lot of our clients. So I asked Andrew Marquis here, he is a superb mortgage lender. And I said, how do you handle all of this?
I've been in the business about 17 years. I'm in residential mortgage lending. This year, I'll close about 900 transactions to give you an idea of how many deals I see. And I think, as Annette was saying, the big issue for everyone in this market is to be able to sell your home and buy a home sort of simultaneously, right? Because ideally, you would sell your home and buy your home on the same day. But I can say from a real estate perspective, it's extremely stressful. It's extremely difficult. You're going to be shuffling all your stuff, moving out of the house the same day. It's going to be near impossible. You can go the route of selling your house first, realizing all the proceeds, but then where are you going in the meantime? Are you staying with family? Are you doing a short-term rental? That could be a decent option, I would say, in some cases. Where I come in is, how do we prepare you to be able to buy a house before you sell? Okay. And so every scenario I deal with is absolutely unique and specific to that individual in terms of what income they have, what assets they have, what kind of equity position they have in their current home. But once I know all that, I can give you a plan of how to execute that and be able to buy a property before you sell. As an example, I'm going to give you a scenario I just dealt with recently, which could be a common scenario. I had a couple. They owned a property in Arlington. The property was worth about $1.2 million. It was a single family. They had no mortgage, no debt. They had about $5 million in assets too, in cash assets. So they were very, very strong financially. And they came to me and said, we want to get a mortgage to buy this condo that we're downsizing to in Belmont. And my first response was basically, why do you need me? You have $5 million in assets. Why can't you borrow against your asset portfolio, do a securities loan and pay it back? Whatever reason, the financial advisor said you cannot access the $5 million. I don't know what it was. They couldn't get a loan. They couldn't get a margin loan. If they were going to take money from that account, they were going to get hit with all sorts of capital gains taxes. There were issues. So they said, Andrew, we want a mortgage on the new property. And then my next question was, okay, I'm going to give you the mortgage. Are you going to pay it off when you sell the Arlington house? In other words, 2 months from now. These folks were like, yeah, we're probably going to pay half of it off. We like the idea of having that interest, because the interest on mortgage loans right now, in case no one's heard about this, are still at all-time lows. You know, these guys are borrowing at about a 3% interest rate. Their advisor's telling them they can get 6 or 7% in their portfolio. So for them to have a little bit of debt on the new house, have a little bit of a tax deduction against the income they still have, wasn't necessarily a bad thing. If they had said to me, we're going to sell and pay off the debt in full, then it comes back to cost, like Dave was saying. Dave's saying, well, they're going to have this loan for 3 to 6 months. We don't want to have to pay, $8,000 to get this mortgage loan. And my response to them would be, well, here's the way we can set this up for you. I'm going to charge you an extra $200 a month to get that mortgage. You're going to pay $200 more per month for the next 6 months. But you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay all your closing costs. Let's call it 10 grand. So we do the math out and we say, okay, they're borrowing $400,000. What's their monthly cost of borrowing? It might end up only being $2,200, $2,000. I'm giving them 10 grand up front. So at the end of the day, the cost of borrowing that money for the 6 months comes almost to zero by the time they back out all the money I'm giving them up front to buy that property, which a lot of which they'd have to pay anyway. Because you have to pay attorney fees, you have to pay title insurance, you have to pay recording fees. There's a lot of stuff you have to pay regardless of whether you take a mortgage loan. So whereas the other couple that said, we want to have that debt longer term, they don't want to pay the extra $200 a month because they're going to have the loan for maybe 5-6 years. And at $200 a month, they're going to pay more than the 10 grand that I would give them up front. So for me, it's really a strategy play of like, if you're going to downsize, how can we position you so that you don't have to move twice or you don't have to close on the same day? Because the ideal scenario is you close, you have some overlap. You can slowly move your furniture things in. You can update the property, maybe work with the architect to get the property best set up for what you're doing. Maybe renovate the kitchen, maybe paint the house, whatever it is that you need to do, and then have maybe a month or two where you can slowly move into the new property. Whenever there's contingencies of like, I have to close on the same day or I have to do this, you're losing leverage in the whole transaction. So you're going to Lynn, and Lynn's going, well, I can list your house. We have to tell everyone you can't close until May. And so half the buyers you could sell your house, well, I'm out because I have to close by the end of February. And so you lose leverage. So really, the more financial tools, like David said, that we can take advantage of to position you to succeed, the better you're going to make out with the whole process. You know, the other option is you might say, well, I have income to buy a new property before I sell, but I don't have any capital. And I might say, all right, well, we can get a home equity line of credit on your existing property. It costs you nothing to get the line of credit. There's no closing costs. We can release some of that equity so we have it available before you buy. So it's really important to have these conversations in preparation. You know, it's like when I do pre-approvals, people buying a home, I always say, like, let's do it months in advance of buying your house. I can still tell you that every Sunday night, I have half a dozen people that call me at 8 p.m. on a Sunday night, and they go, I need a pre-approval. I have to make an offer at 9 a.m. tomorrow. And I said, you don't have a pre-approval yet, and you're looking to buy a house tomorrow morning? I said, no, it just sprung upon us. So, you know, like with what we do, it's really about educating the customer and giving you options and ideas and really educating you so you know all the scenarios you can take advantage of. You know, just like Greta said, with all the different living arrangements you have, knowledge is power. So that's really where we come in to try to help you, you know, and give you options. And whether it makes sense to do, you know, a regular mortgage loan or a reverse loan, or just re-engineer your current property that you might need some capital for, there's different solutions for every unique scenario that people are in. So I just really appreciate being here and having the opportunity to talk a little bit about this.
Seems to me if there's any takeaway from the four people who've spoken, it's do your homework up front. Now, Lynn, you downsized about a year ago. How long have you been in real estate?
24 years.
So you know all about moving, you know all about buying and selling, don't you?
I thought it was going to be a piece of cake. We were in a lovely Chestnut Hill condo for 30 years. 30 years. My husband owned it before I met him. And when they say opposites attract, I would say that we are in a lot of ways opposite. I take risks, I make changes. God love him, he doesn't. And so what I thought was going to be a really easy process that was financially logical, that met our needs better, that put us near our kids, was actually amazingly challenging. And I think we started talking about an event like this as a result of that. We were burdened by stuff. I had 35 different mugs with cute sayings on them. We were just burdened by things that we weren't sure what to do with. Nobody wants. My kids don't want my grandmother's china. What's the matter with them? You know, there were just a lot of things to handle, and the actual physicality of the move and identifying a place. Everyone who knew about our planning for this event said to me, what the hell are you doing? Your job is to buy and sell homes and help your clients buy and sell homes. Why are you bringing all these other folks here? And the truth is that, especially as you're thinking of downsizing, my job is to help you understand your options. And if one of those guys gives you a better option than selling it, that's okay, because it's really about serving your needs. I want to be your friend and your real estate professional for the long term. And if one of your needs is better met because you can stay in place and refit a bathroom and enjoy your life where you are, that's fine. I'm patient. So at some point or another, when it's time to sell your house, I figure if I take really good care of you, you'll call me. You know, and that's kind of where we come from on a day like this. Educating my husband, who is a very smart man. He's been in stocks and bonds forever. He's financially sophisticated. It was really hard for him to really understand why I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And so I assume that if the two of us in our various positions and professions struggled with this process, we can't be alone. and that our goal is really to serve our own generational community. We get it, we've been there. Annette chose to refit her home and age in place, and we chose to move closer to our kids, have a little more space so that I could have kids come visit more easily. Frankly, put half the value of a Chestnut Hill luxury condo in the bank and take some pressure off.
Well, this is interesting because we're talking about downsizing. We're envisioning getting into a smaller place. Lynn downsized financially, significantly downsized financially.
And improved our quality of life, which is really, so I really think that it's important for anyone considering these changes to really slow it down, think about what improvements in your life your physical health requires or your desire for a little bit different lifestyle requires. We went from Chestnut Hill, very urban, to Wayland. My brother came to visit. He says, "My God, there are cows down there." And yet I'm still only 9 miles from the city. So it worked for us. It was a really big change. And my takeaway as a real estate professional, and frankly, I've spent the majority of my real estate career on the leadership side, teaching young agents how to launch a business. So I thought I was pretty damn smart at it and that I knew what to do. And managing my own move and my own spouse through the emotions of it was just amazingly eye-opening. So when we envisioned this event, it was really about giving you an education. And we figure if we're willing to share amazing resources, I've driven this man crazy more times than you know. He's helped my kids get into their houses. These are people we know and that we trust will give you great information and great service. And if it means that you're not ready to sell, that's okay. I want to know you for the long term. And I want to take care of you and help you realize whatever it is that you want to accomplish. So I can't tell you how much we appreciate that you're here today.
A lot to learn, a lot to know. I want to once again thank you all so very much for joining us today.